It was one of those quiet evenings when the hum of the fridge felt louder than my own thoughts. That's when I noticed Daniel's backpack, slouched carelessly on the couch, the zipper just slightly open. He'd told me he was going straight to work after the gym, but here it was, like it had been waiting for me. I told myself I was only going to grab my charger, nothing more. But there was this knot in my stomach, that whispering, uneasy voice that always shows up when something's off. My fingers hovered over the zipper, my heart thudding faster than it had any reason to. I pulled the zipper open, and his cologne drifted up, but there was something else beneath it, something faint, unfamiliar. My eyes landed on a makeup compact, the kind I've never owned, tucked neatly in a small cosmetic kit. Right next to it was a sealed pack of condoms. My breath caught, and for a moment, everything went quiet, like the air had been sucked out of the room. My hands started to shake, so I grabbed the edge of the couch, trying to steady myself. We hadn't been intimate in weeks, not because I didn't want to, but because he'd been too tired or too busy. And now, under the soft yellow light of our living room, all those excuses lined up like they'd been rehearsed. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. That's not me. Instead, this strange, icy calm took over. I closed the bag carefully, making sure every strap and zipper looked untouched. On the outside, I was still. On the inside, something had already broken loose, and I knew it wouldn't be put back together. I sat back, my eyes fixed on the bag like it might suddenly explain itself if I stared long enough. My pulse was steady now, but there was this slow burn building in my chest. I thought about the last few weeks, how he'd come home later and later, claiming a last-minute shift or helping a friend with something urgent. I remembered the faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine clinging to his jacket, the kind that didn't fade even after a wash. Every puzzle piece I'd been ignoring was now clicking into place, and the picture they formed was ugly. The urge to storm into wherever he was and throw the bag at his feet was strong, but I knew better. That's the thing about me. I don't explode, I calculate. My mother used to say, "If you keep your hands still and your voice calm, you'll see the truth faster than if you shout." She was right. My mind was already shifting from shock to something sharper, more focused. I wasn't just hurt, I was awake. And now that I was awake, there was no going back. I pushed the bag away from me and stood up, feeling the coolness of the hardwood floor under my bare feet. The apartment looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a stage set, and I'd just found the prop that would change the entire play. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and forced a slow sip. I didn't need answers from him tonight. What I needed was time, and the right moment to use what I now knew. I carried the glass of water back to the couch and sat where his bag had been, as if claiming the spot for myself. My hands traced the seam of the cushion, grounding me, keeping me from unraveling. I thought about the woman who owned that makeup kit. Was she someone from the gym? A coworker? A stranger he'd met in one of those just grabbing a drink nights he swore were harmless? The questions kept coming, but they weren't frantic. They were orderly, lining up in my mind like names on a list I intended to check off, one by one. I could almost hear his voice in my head, smooth and confident, ready with the kind of excuses that once had me believing him. But not this time. I realized I was gripping my glass so tightly the condensation had dripped down my wrist, leaving a thin trail of cold. I set it down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. A part of me wanted to feel broken, to let the grief in, but another part, stronger now, refused. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else, something I'd control. By the time I stood again, the decision was made. I wouldn't confront him tonight. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me wounded or angry. He'd walk through that door thinking life was the same, unaware that the ground under his feet had already shifted. And when the time was right, I'd make sure he felt it crumble. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, the kind of alertness that comes when your mind refuses to rest. Daniel was already gone, off to the gym, according to the note he'd left on the counter. I stood there staring at his handwriting, the loops and slants suddenly looking like lies inked onto paper. I poured myself coffee, each sip sharp and grounding, while my thoughts began arranging themselves like a map. This wasn't just about a makeup kit and condoms. This was about a pattern I'd been too willing to ignore. Memories started surfacing, the late nights, the faint traces of perfume, the way his phone always seemed to be face down on the table. I remembered the time I'd asked if I could join him at the gym, and he'd laughed it off, saying he preferred to zone out alone. I hadn't thought much of it then, but now it sounded like a cover story. I could feel the threads pulling tighter, weaving a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't turn away from. I knew I needed proof, not just for me, but for whatever was coming next. I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through his gym's social media page, the public posts, the tagged photos. That's when I saw it. Daniel in the background of someone else's picture, laughing, leaning in just a little too close. The woman's smile was wide, her hand resting on his arm like it belonged there. And on the counter beside her, the exact same makeup brand I'd found in his bag. I zoomed in on the photo until the pixels blurred, but the details I needed were crystal clear. The compact, the lipstick shade, even the faint pattern on her gym bag. It all matched. My pulse didn't race this time. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. I took a screenshot, then another, making sure to save them somewhere he couldn't find. If there was one thing I'd learned from watching people get caught, it was that timing and evidence mattered more than raw emotion. The more I looked at her profile, the more pieces slid into place. Posts tagged at the same restaurants Daniel had discovered recently. A picture from a night I remembered him coming home late, smelling faintly sweet, not like sweat from the gym. My stomach tightened, but I refused to give in to the sting of betrayal. Not yet. Every new connection only sharpened my focus. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was becoming a case file in my head. I leaned back, scrolling slowly, almost methodically, as if I were peeling away layers of their little secret. I wasn't rushing, because I wasn't going to confront him empty-handed. No. I'd let him keep walking around thinking I was in the dark. Meanwhile, I'd be cataloging every detail, every slip, every breadcrumb they left behind. And when the time came, the truth would be undeniable. By the time I closed my phone, I had a folder full of evidence, photos of his bag, screenshots from her profile, dates and times neatly tucked away in my notes. It was strange how methodical I felt. No tears, no shaking hands, just this steady, deliberate rhythm in my chest. I wasn't reacting. I was building something. Every little detail was a brick, and I was quietly constructing the wall that would eventually corner him in. I thought back to the early days with Daniel, when I believed every word he said without hesitation. Back then, I would have confronted him immediately, desperate for answers. But now? I understood the value of silence. Silence was power. It gave me space to think, to plan, to decide exactly how I wanted this to end. And I already knew. It wasn't going to be private. It wasn't going to be quiet. I sat there in the soft light of the kitchen, sipping the last of my now cold coffee, and felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just a girlfriend who'd been lied to. I was a woman who'd just been handed the script, and I was rewriting the ending. He didn't know it yet, but the game had already started. The decision to wait wasn't easy, but it was the smartest move I could make. If I confronted him now, he'd twist it, spin some half-believable story, and walk away thinking he'd dodged a bullet. I wanted more than an argument. I wanted a moment so sharp, so undeniable, that it would slice through every lie he'd ever told me. That meant I had to play along. Keep the smile, keep the routine, keep him blind to the fact that I'd already seen behind the curtain. That night, I slipped the makeup kit and the condoms back into his bag exactly as I'd found them. Every strap, every zipper, every angle was just as before. It was almost like putting a snake back into a box, knowing it would slither out again when it thought no one was looking. My hands were steady this time. No hesitation. The evidence wasn't going anywhere. It would be right there when I needed it most. Over dinner, I acted as if nothing had changed. I laughed at his stories, asked about his day, even reached across the table to touch his hand. He didn't notice the subtle difference in my gaze, the way I was memorizing him, storing away the way he looked when he thought he was winning. He had no idea I was already setting the stage for his downfall, piece by careful piece. The plan came to me while I was washing dishes, the warm water running over my hands as my mind pieced it together. If I wanted the truth to explode in his face, it couldn't just be between us. It needed an audience. I pictured him, caught in the glare of other people's eyes, scrambling for words while I stood there, calm and untouchable. That's when I decided on the surprise dinner. A celebration he wouldn't see coming, one that would burn his perfect little double life to the ground. I started with mutual friends, slipping the invitations into casual conversations, making it sound like a sweet, spontaneous gesture. Then I added a few of his colleagues, people whose respect he valued far too much. And for the final touch, I created a fake account. It didn't take much to find her, the woman from the gym, and send her a friendly, fabricated message. Big surprise for Daniel tonight. He's going to love it. I could almost hear the excitement in her imagined reply. By the end of the week, the guest list was complete, and the date was set. The restaurant was one of our favorites, a place layered with memories he'd now wish he could erase. I could already see it in my mind. The moment she walked in, expecting something entirely different, and the instant Daniel realized the walls were closing in. That thought alone made me sleep better than I had in days. In the days leading up to it, I played my part flawlessly. I texted him sweet reminders about the dinner, made light conversation about what he might wear, even joked that I had a little surprise planned. Watching him smile at me, completely unaware, was almost intoxicating. He thought he was the one keeping secrets, but the truth was, I was letting him dig his own grave one casual word at a time. Behind the scenes, I confirmed every detail with the restaurant, table for 12, near the center, where nothing could be hidden. I arranged for the photos I'd taken of his bag to be printed on thick, glossy paper. I wanted them to be tangible, undeniable, something that would sit heavy in the hands of anyone who saw them. This wasn't about rage anymore. It was about precision. The night before the dinner, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself differently. I wasn't just Lara, the girlfriend who'd been lied to. I was the woman who was about to turn his perfectly crafted life inside out. And the best part? He would have no idea until the moment it happened, right there under the warm glow of the restaurant lights. The night of the dinner I arrived early, my heels clicking softly against the tiled floor as the maitre d' led me to the table. The restaurant had that familiar golden glow, the low hum of conversation blending with the clink of wine glasses. It was the perfect backdrop, warm, inviting, completely unaware of the storm about to break. I smoothed my dress, not out of nerves, but to anchor myself in the moment. Every step of this night had been planned, and now, all I had to do was let it unfold. One by one, the guests arrived, friends greeting me with hugs, colleagues offering polite smiles. I played the gracious host, my laugh easy, my tone light. And then Daniel walked in, his face lighting up when he saw the familiar faces. He kissed my cheek, whispered something about me being too sweet, and pulled out a chair. He still thought this was about him. In a way, it was, but not the way he imagined. I kept an eye on the door, my pulse steady but alert. When she walked in, she had that certain sparkle, like someone who'd been promised something special. Her hair was freshly styled, her dress deliberate, her smile aimed directly at him. Daniel froze mid-sentence, the air between them thick enough to feel. And that was my cue to stand. I stepped toward her with the kind of smile you use when meeting someone you've heard so much about. "You must be the owner of the makeup and condoms I found in his bag," I said, my voice smooth, almost conversational. The words hung in the air like smoke, drifting over the table before anyone could react. Conversations died instantly, the clink of silverware silenced. Every pair of eyes swung between me, Daniel, and her. Her smile faltered first, confusion flashing into recognition. Daniel's jaw tightened, the muscles in his face twitching like he was searching for a script and finding nothing. He opened his mouth, but I was faster. I reached into my bag and laid the glossy photos on the center of the table, each one deliberate, each one facing outward so everyone could see. Gasps rippled across the room. A few people leaned forward, others leaned back, as if physical distance could save them from the discomfort. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough on its own. "I thought it was time everyone here knew exactly what he's been busy with," I said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. And in that moment, I wasn't just exposing him. I was reclaiming every quiet night I'd spent wondering if I was imagining things. This was my confirmation, and his collapse, served in front of a full audience. The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting match could have been. Daniel's friends shifted in their seats, some avoiding eye contact altogether, others staring at him like they'd never seen him before. The woman's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, her eyes darting between me and the exit, as if she was calculating the fastest way out. Daniel reached for my arm, but I stepped back, my chair scraping slightly against the floor. He had no idea how far beyond his reach I'd already moved. I straightened, letting the weight of the moment settle exactly where it belonged. On him. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my tone polite but final, as if I'd just wrapped up a perfectly normal dinner party. My hand skimmed over the photos one last time before I left them there, like evidence at a crime scene. No cleanup. No chance to hide what he'd done. The room felt smaller now, tighter, the walls closing in on him just as I'd planned. Without another glance at Daniel, I picked up my clutch and walked toward the door, the sound of my heels sharp against the tile. Behind me, voices began to murmur, questions bubbling up in hushed tones. But I didn't turn back. This wasn't my scene anymore. I'd delivered the truth, and now I was leaving him to choke on it. By the time I got home, the night air had cooled my skin, but the fire inside me was still burning steady. I locked the door behind me, the click of the deadbolt feeling more like a final verdict than simple security. My phone lit up on the counter, 3 missed calls from Daniel, a handful of messages I didn't bother to read. I opened our chat, hit block, and watched his name vanish from my screen like it had never been there at all. Freedom could be that simple, I realized. Sometimes it was just one decisive tap. The apartment was mine, literally. The lease had always been in my name, and tonight, that fact felt like armor. I gathered a few of his things into a box, not with anger, but with a quiet efficiency that made the whole process feel almost cleansing. His scent lingered faintly on a sweater, but it didn't hit me like it used to. Now, it was just fabric, just remnants of a story I was no longer living. By the time I changed into something comfortable, I felt lighter, almost buoyant. I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at the window, watching the city lights flicker like tiny promises. Out there, the world kept moving, cars passing, strangers laughing, lives unfolding. And I realized mine was about to do the same. But this time, it would be on my terms. The fallout spread faster than I expected. By morning, The story had already traveled through our friend group like wildfire. A couple of mutual friends texted me, some with sympathy, others with barely concealed shock. One even admitted, "I always thought something was off about him." I didn't bother replying to most. I wasn't interested in post-mortems or gossip. This wasn't about reliving what happened. It was about stepping into what came next. I changed the locks that afternoon. The locksmith worked quickly, his tools clicking and turning while I stood there sipping coffee, feeling the layers of my old life peel away. When the door swung open with the new key, it felt like crossing a threshold into something cleaner, safer. This was my space now, free from the lies that had once seeped into every corner. I could breathe here. And for the first time in weeks, I felt an undeniable sense of ownership, not just of the apartment, but of myself. Every room seemed brighter, not because the light had changed, but because I wasn't carrying his shadow anymore. It was a quiet victory, but it was mine. A few weeks later, I was packing a small weekend bag. My bag, my trip, my rules. No checking in with anyone, no explaining where I was going or why. As I folded my favorite sweater, I caught my reflection in the mirror and noticed something different. I wasn't just smiling. I was glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. This wasn't the grin of someone pretending everything was fine. This was real, born from the kind of peace you only find after you've burned down what was poisoning you. My little business idea, the one I'd shelved for years because the timing wasn't right, was finally taking shape. Between planning trips and late-night brainstorming sessions, my days felt full in the best possible way. And every now and then, I'd get a text from a friend saying Daniel's reputation had taken another hit. I never asked for details. It wasn't my story to follow anymore. The ending, at least for me, was already written. As I zipped up my bag, I thought back to the night I'd opened his. "The last time I opened a bag, I lost him," I murmured to myself with a smirk. "This time, I found me." And just like that, I stepped out the door, locking it behind me. Not to keep anyone out, but to keep this new life exactly as I wanted it.
My father's voice cut through the auditorium. "You call that dancing?" he barked. I didn't pay thousands for mediocrity. Silence. Hundreds of eyes on me. Tears blurred the spotlight. 12 years of ballet. Gone in a single outburst. Then the music started again. Soft, unexpected. And my 13-year-old sister stood up, walked onto the stage, took my hand, and everything changed. That moment is stuck in my memory, clear and painful. I was 18 and performing a solo I had practiced for months. The Odette variation from Swan Lake. It was difficult, emotional, and the result of years of hard work, sore feet, and strict routines. Wearing my white tutu, I danced across the stage, doing all the moves perfectly, arabesque, développé, arms in second position. The audience was quiet, watching every step. Then came the hardest part, the fautes, 32 spins in a row. I had struggled with them for years, practiced until I almost broke my ankle. I had dreamed of this moment. 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12. I was doing great. Everything was going right. Then on the 26th spin, my ankle twisted just a little. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was enough. "You call that dancing?" My father's angry voice broke the silence like a thunderstorm. "IDIDNA thousand Ds FR okay righty." The pianist stopped. The music ended. I stood there, arms out, trying to stay in position, while the audience gasped. I couldn't move. Tears filled my eyes. I had worked so hard, missed parties, lost friends, given everything for this, and now my father had ruined it in front of 300 people. Dr. Richard Bennett, famous surgeon, respected man, and the scariest ballet dad at my school, had just publicly shamed me. Then something incredible happened. The pianist started playing again, picking up exactly where she had stopped, as if challenging my father with music. And from the front row, my little sister Lily stood up. She was wearing a simple blue dress. Without asking anyone, she walked onto the stage. I wanted to stop her, protect her from our dad. But I couldn't move. She stood beside me. Lily had tried ballet once and hated it. She loved math and stars instead. Our father didn't think much of those things. She usually stayed quiet to avoid trouble. But now, here she was, eyes wide behind her glasses, brave and determined. She whispered, "Count us in, Ellie. Don't let him win." And then she tried an arabesque. It wasn't good. Her back was off, arms too stiff, feet wrong. But she stood strong and proud. Something in her courage gave me strength. I started dancing again. I finished the fauetes, but this time it wasn't for perfection. I wasn't dancing for my dad or the ballet school anymore. I was dancing with my sister. She spun beside me, awkwardly but full of heart. I saw my father half standing, shocked and furious. My mom sat beside him, her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. I didn't know if she was scared or amazed, but I didn't care anymore. All that mattered was the music, the dance, and my sister next to me, turning my failure into something beautiful, something free. The music ended. The room was silent for a second. Then the audience stood up and clapped loudly. They weren't clapping for perfection. They were cheering for something real. Lily squeezed my hand. "Bow," she whispered. We bowed together. I saw our ballet teacher watching from the side. For once, her strict face had a little smile. In that moment, sweaty, crying, surrounded by applause, I understood something that 12 years of ballet had never taught me. Sometimes the best performances aren't perfect. They're just real. Backstage, my father stormed into the dressing room. "What the hell was that?" he said angrily. He was tall, wearing a sharp suit, fists clenched. Everyone nearby walked away quickly. My mother stayed behind him, her face blank. "Richard, not here," she tried. "Be quiet, Patricia," he snapped. He looked from Lily to me, trying to decide who to yell at first. I stepped in front of Lily. "It was my idea," I said. "I asked her to help." "Don't lie," he said. "You've never cared about her. You only care about ballet." His words hurt because a part of it was true. I had been so focused on dance that I hadn't always been there for my sister. But she had shown up for me when I needed her most. Lily stepped forward. "I did it," she said. "Ellie didn't ask me." Dad turned his full anger on her. "You embarrassed yourself. And this family." "No, Dad," I said. "You did that when you yelled at me in front of everyone." His eyes widened. I had never talked back to him before. "Excuse me," he said. "You heard me," I said. My heart was beating fast. "You embarrassed me because I made one small mistake. You ruined everything I've worked for. And Lily saved it. She saved me." My mom made a soft sound, but my dad's face turned red. "After everything I've done for you," he said. "All the money, time, the doors I opened for you. Opportunities." I laughed a little. "You mean the childhood I missed? The friends I couldn't have? The colleges I didn't apply to because ballet comes first?" He stepped closer, trying to scare me like always. "Without me, you'd be average. Is that what you want, Eleanor? To be average?" That word, average, had always haunted me. He used it to scare me into working harder. But now, after what had just happened, I saw things differently. Maybe average wouldn't be so bad, I said, if it meant being happy. He looked stunned. "Happy? Ballet isn't about happy. It's about being the best." "No, Dad," Lily said. "That's what it means to you, not to Ellie." My mom stepped in, trying to calm him. "Richard, people are watching." He noticed the eyes around us and lowered his voice. "We'll talk at home, both of you in the car. Now." But I didn't move. "I'm riding with Clara's family," I said. Clara had invited me to a party. I had always said no before, but this time was different. "You're not," he said. "I'm 18, I reminded him. "And I'm going to celebrate." He looked like he might drag me out, but then he gave up. "Fine, make a fool of yourself," he said, turning to Lily. "But you're coming home. Now." Lily looked at me, unsure. I nodded. "It's okay," I said. "You've done enough." "I'll see you later," she said, and followed our parents. She looked back once, her eyes full of pride. When they were gone, I sat down, shaking. The courage that had carried me was fading. But deep down, I knew. Something had changed. And maybe, for the first time, that change was mine. Clara emerged from wherever she tactfully vanished during the showdown. eyes wide with shock and something like admiration. "Holy shit, Ellie," she whispered. "I've never seen anyone talk back to the doc like that." Neither had I, especially not me. "You're really coming to the party?" she asked, her expression a mix of disbelief and barely contained glee. I turned to face the dressing room mirror. Stage makeup still painted me into someone regal, rhinestone tiara glinting, bun sculpted to perfection, lashes long and curled. The image staring back was the same one I practiced into existence, a flawless ballerina. But beneath the lacquered exterior, something new stirred. "Yeah," I said, the answer landing in my chest like a truth I hadn't let myself speak before. "I'm coming." It was 1:37 a.m. when I crept through the front door, 3 hours past curfew. The Bennett house was silent, steeped in the kind of hush that clings after a storm. The cast party had been different, eye-opening. Dancers I trained beside for years suddenly saw me, talked to me, as if I were a real person. They shared jokes, photos, stories. Compliments about my technique morphed into genuine conversations about the final duet, about Lily. "That was the most honest thing I've ever seen on that stage," Clara had said, squeezing my hand. "For once, it wasn't the perfect Ellie robot. It was you. The perfect Ellie robot." Was that who they thought I was? Who I'd become? Shoes in hand, I moved through the dark, aiming for stealth. But then I spotted her, Lily, sitting halfway up the staircase like some pint-sized guardian angel in oversized glasses. "You are so screwed," she whispered, but her grin gave her away. I dropped onto the step beside her. "Tell me something I don't know." "Dad went nuclear, ranted for a full hour. Mom actually told him to shut up." She blinked, stunned even in the retelling. I don't think I've ever heard her contradict him. Neither had I. Her default setting was quiet detachment. "How bad?" I asked. Lily paused. 9.5 on the meltdown scale. "He's threatening to cut your ballet funding." I nodded. I'd expected as much. Control for him had always been measured in dollar signs, costumes, intensives, endless lessons. "Maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing," I said, surprising both of us. Lily frowned. "But you love ballet." Do I? The question had been echoing all night. Or did I just never believe not loving it was an option? She went quiet, her brows drawing together in thought. "So, what would you do instead?" "I don't know." Saying it out loud was terrifying and freeing. That's the thing. I've never had space to figure it out. "You could go to college," she offered. "You're smart. You could get in anywhere." College. The road never taken because it didn't fit the plan, but now it glimmered with possibility. Maybe I could. Lily yawned, her earlier buzz finally catching up to her. "Whatever happens, it was worth it. You should have seen Dad's face when I walked on stage. Thought his head might explode." I laughed too loud, then covered my mouth. "You were amazing. Awful technique, but brave as hell." "That's me," she said, leaning into my shoulder. "Terrible dancer, excellent rebel." I wrapped her in a hug, wondering how I'd missed the fire in this quiet girl. While I'd been polishing pirouettes, she'd been quietly learning how to be. "Thank you," I whispered into her hair, "for showing me how." The confrontation came at breakfast, just as I predicted. Dad sat at the head of the table, newspaper shielding him like a fortress. Mom served eggs and toast like a diplomat defusing a bomb. Lily met my eyes across the table, eyebrows raised in solidarity. Silence hung thick, broken only by the clink of cutlery, until Dad lowered the paper. That X-ray stare of his locked on me. "I spoke with Madame Petrova this morning," he said. "She agrees your behavior was unprofessional and deeply disappointing." I kept still. I doubted Madame had used those exact words. "But," he continued, "she's willing to overlook the incident based on your record. The New York intensive is still open to you." Before yesterday, I'd have jumped at that lifeline. Now it felt foreign. "I'm not going," I said. My mother's fork slipped. Dad's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me," he said, voice low and dangerous. "I said I'm not going. I'm taking a break from ballet." "A break?" His lip curled. "And what do you intend to do with this break?" "I'm applying to colleges. I've missed early admission, but there's still time for regular." "This is absurd," he said. "You have a clear path. Do you know how many girls would kill for what you have?" "Then give it to one of them," I said quietly. "Someone who actually wants it." "You want it." I wanted to want it, I corrected. But yesterday, dancing with Lily, imperfect and unplanned. I actually enjoyed ballet for the first time in years. Enjoyment? He spat. This isn't about fun, it's about excellence. Maybe for you, I said. But it's my life. He shoved back from the table, rising to his full height. Don't expect me to pay for some meaningless liberal arts degree. Richard, my mother said sharply. He turned on her, shocked. You stay out of this. Her voice didn't waver. It's not weakness to want happiness, and if you can't see that, maybe I've been silent too long. A beat of stunned quiet, then he left, the newspaper a crumpled casualty in his wake. Mom exhaled. He'll come around, she said, though her tone was uncertain. Maybe, I said. But either way, I have to do this. She reached across the table and took my hand, tentative, unfamiliar. Then I'll help. Me too, Lily added, toast in one hand. I've already found some scholarships. I looked at them both, this brave, blooming version of my mother, this whip-smart sister who had quietly paved the way, and felt something shift. Thank you, I whispered. Someone had to save you from a life of bloody toes and starvation, Lily said with a shrug, though I am never doing that stage thing again. I laughed, really laughed. You were ridiculous. Sometimes, she said, ridiculous is exactly what's needed. The months that followed were a strange mix of hard and freeing. Dad followed through, no more money, but with dance no longer swallowing my life, I found space. I got a job at a coffee shop, applied to 7 colleges, wrote essays about identity and breaking away and learning to choose for myself. My mother surprised everyone by enrolling in a class at the community college. She started offering opinions at dinner. Little revolutions, but they mattered. One afternoon, Madame Petrova summoned me. I expected a lecture. Instead, she poured tea. You are well, she asked. Better. Different. She nodded. In 50 years, I have seen many perfect dancers. Most I forget. But what you and your sister did, that I remember. Ballet is not only precision, it is truth. I'm sorry if I let you down. You didn't. She looked me in the eye. You made a choice. That is strength. The door stays open, if not to the old path, then perhaps a new one. One you choose. In April, I got into 5 of 7 schools, including my top pick. It wasn't a full ride, but the merit scholarship helped. I sat on the porch, acceptance letter in hand, staring at the cost breakdown. Dad joined me silently. You got in, he said. Yes. Long pause. The sun was setting. Your solo was perfect, until the 26th turn. I know. I shouldn't have shouted. He looked away. It was wrong. It was the closest thing I'd ever get to an apology. This school, he said, nodding at the letter. What'll you study? Not sure. Psychology, maybe, or writing. I want to explore. He frowned, but didn't argue. I'll pay the remainder, he said at last. I blinked. What? You're still my daughter. Your education matters, even if I disagree with your path. Not reconciliation, but something. A step. Thank you, I said. Later, Lily came bounding outside. You're going, and he's paying. Victory. I laughed. It's a start. It's because of the stage, she said. You defied him, and the world didn't end. Maybe. Or maybe he realized he can't choreograph your life forever. She grinned. I tackled her into a headlock. On the porch, tangled in laughter, I felt something shift. Not the end of a story, just the beginning of one that belonged entirely to me. Not the perfect dance, maybe, but the right one. They say some memories stay with you forever, like scars you can't forget. That day, at my brother's engagement, I felt like I was the scar, something everyone wished would go away. The room was packed with guests, full of laughter, clinking glasses, and flashing cameras. But even with all the warmth and noise, I felt cold and distant, like I was underwater, watching everyone else live freely while I struggled to breathe. I kept fixing my navy blue dress, trying to look neat. It wasn't fancy, just long sleeves, a simple neckline. Safe, invisible. Exactly how they preferred me. Mama, look. Anya, my 7-year-old daughter, tugged at my hand. The cake has real flowers. And the lights, they look like stars. I smiled, my heart full of love, but also fear. Fear that someday the world would dim her bright spirit like it had dimmed mine. Their beautiful sweetheart, I whispered, squeezing her hand. On stage, under twinkling lights and white roses, stood my brother Kian, glowing with happiness in his cream-colored outfit. Next to him, his fiancée Isla looked stunning, like a queen surveying her kingdom. But when Ella looked at me, her face tightened, like I was something unwanted in her perfect world. I saw her whisper something to my mother. I didn't hear it, but I didn't have to. I'd seen that look before. My mother nodded, her usual quiet way of agreeing to things that concerned me, but never included me. She walked over with purpose. Everyone made space for her. She didn't smile. She never did for me. Zoya, she said gently, which somehow made it worse. Please stay away from the stage. Ella doesn't want any bad luck near her today. I blinked. Bad luck. I repeated, thinking I must have misunderstood. But she didn't waver. She's right, my mother added, like it was just a fact. You always had unfortunate timing. Let's not ruin this. Her words hit me like ice. The beautiful room now felt like a trap. Around us, people kept chatting and laughing, but I could feel the looks. Some ignored it. Others watched. Either way, I felt the shame rise. I looked to Kian, hoping he'd step in. Our eyes met for a second. I saw guilt, but then he looked away. That hurt more than anything. I couldn't find the words. So I said nothing, just stepped back and held Anya's hand tighter. Why can't we go up there, Mama? She asked, not understanding the weight of everything. I knelt next to her and whispered, because sometimes people don't see what's truly special. She looked confused. She glanced at Isla, then at me, and I saw something shift in her eyes, like she understood more than she should. That's when I should have known she wouldn't stay quiet. I wasn't always the unlucky one. Once I was just Zoya, a happy little girl with big dreams and a loud laugh. My dad called me his little sunbeam because I woke up early, excited for the day. My mom used to smile at me with love in her eyes. Then everything changed when I was 8. A car crash, a rainy night. My dad never made it home. I remember my mom's scream, the neighbors outside, and me holding onto little Kian as our world collapsed. That's when I first heard someone call me bad luck. My aunt said it quietly at the funeral. My mom didn't argue. After that, everything changed. My mom grew distant, cold. She poured all her love into Kian, the child who survived. I became the girl they pitied, the one they avoided blaming but never fully embraced. I didn't blame Kian. He was kind when we were kids. But as we grew up, he became the golden boy. And I, his sister, faded into the background. I got married young, mostly to escape. My husband, Ahmed, was kind in the beginning. But after 2 miscarriages, he changed. After the 3rd, he left with just a text. I can't do this anymore. That message shattered me. Then came Anya, my miracle. She wasn't supposed to happen, but she did. A strong, stubborn little girl who brought light back into my life. For a moment, I believed I wasn't broken. My mother's reaction when she first held her, I hope she doesn't have your luck. I laughed. It hurt. Now, years later, here we were again. At my brother's engagement, I promised myself I'd behave. Just smile, support, and stay quiet. But from the moment I walked in, I felt the stares, the fake smiles, the polite voices full of pity. Only Uncle Rayhan greeted me with real warmth. Zoya, you look radiant, he said, giving me a hug. He always treated me like I mattered. Still, I kept to the sidelines. Anya was full of joy, spinning around in her dress, admiring everything. She was the only part of me untouched by pain. But I should have known it wouldn't last. Just an hour later, my mother and Isla told me, without kindness, that I wasn't welcome on stage, not even as family. Something broke inside me, not loudly, just a quiet snap that kept aching. And something else was shifting too, not in me, but in Anya. What happened next would silence the entire room. The stage shimmered with lights and gold. Everything was perfect, even the rose petals on the floor. I stood at the back, pretending to admire the decorations, but my mind kept repeating my mother's words. Isla doesn't want bad luck near her. I stood still, arms crossed, trying to keep my emotions in check. Anya sat beside me, swinging her legs, unaware of how crushed I felt. Part of me wanted to leave, to run before the shame overwhelmed me. But I stayed for Kian. Even if he didn't stand up for me, I still wanted to see him happy. The host's voice echoed. We're moments away from the ring ceremony. Family, please come to the stage. People moved forward. I took a step, then stopped. Isla caught my eye, smirked, and whispered to Kian. He didn't look at me, just nodded. That smirk wasn't about the ceremony, it was her victory. She had won the silent battle for my brother. I remained rooted to the spot, feeling 8 years old again, hiding behind the sofa while adults decided my fate. Why aren't we going? Anya asked, standing and tugging at my sleeve. I crouched beside her, struggling to keep my voice steady. We'll watch from here, sweetheart. She frowned, confusion clouding her bright eyes. But everyone's going, even the cousins. I swallowed hard. Sometimes we don't get to go where others do, and that's okay. It wasn't okay, not even a little. The guests gathered closer, phones came out, flashes popped. My mother stood proudly by Isla's side, her spine straight as a ruler, not even glancing my way. Uncle Rehan lingered near the front row, looking back at me briefly, his eyes soft with something like apology, but he said nothing. Maybe he didn't know what to say, or maybe, like everyone else, he thought silence was safer. I didn't cry, I wouldn't give them that satisfaction, but inside, I was unraveling. Why was I always the one they could ignore? Why did no one ever speak up for me? Why did Can look the other way like I was something shameful to be hidden? I was his sister. I had helped raise him when our father died. I stayed up with him through exam stress, heartbreaks, nightmares. And now I wasn't even good enough to stand beside him on what should have been the happiest day of his life. My fingers dug into my palms so tightly I left crescent-shaped marks. I told myself to just breathe, just wait it out, let it pass. This pain was familiar, an old friend I'd learned to live with. But Anya wasn't done. She climbed onto her chair, staring hard at the stage. Then she whispered, "Mama, that lady is mean." I blinked, startled. "Anya, don't say that." Her face scrunched thoughtfully. She said, "You bring bad luck, but you don't." And then, without warning, she hopped off the chair and started walking toward the front, her little blue dress swishing determinedly with each step. "Anya, wait." I reached out, too slow. She was already halfway there, moving with purpose through the crowd. I had no idea what she was about to do, but in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a flicker of fear, and beneath it, a spark of hope. I stood frozen as the hem of Anya's dress disappeared between 2 rows of chairs. My heart plummeted. For a second, the air felt too thick to breathe. I broke from my daze and pushed through the crowd, whispering hurried apologies as I tried not to draw attention. But heads were already turning, eyes following my daughter's progress toward the stage. Anya reached the front. She wasn't rushing or hiding. She stood tall as a 7-year-old can, looking up at the people towering above her. Kian, Isla, my mother, all staring down as if she'd appeared from another dimension. I wanted to run, to scoop her up, to disappear before she said something that would make everything worse. But then she did something I never saw coming. She walked right up to the microphone. "Anya," I hissed, too late, too far away. Illa's hand shot out as if to stop her, then hesitated. Kian looked confused. My mother's face fell, her mouth parting slightly in shock. Then it happened. Anya gripped the mic with both hands, looked up at the sea of faces staring down at her, and said in the clearest voice, "Can I say something about the bride?" The room went still, movie scene still. Every table, every mouthful, every phone mid-photo froze. Illa blinked, her expression faltering for the first time all evening. Maybe now's not. But Anya kept going, eyes locked ahead. "My name is Anya. I'm 7, and I want to talk about what I heard Auntie Isla say." My legs went weak. I could barely stand. "Please don't, baby, please." But she wasn't trembling. She wasn't nervous. She looked calm, serious, like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire short life. She said, "My mama brings bad luck," she continued, her voice unwavering. "But that's not true. My mama is the best person I know." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She takes care of me all by herself. She made me chicken soup when I was sick and read me stories when I had nightmares. She doesn't yell. She just hugs. She says love should be kind and quiet. Someone near me gasped. I don't know who. Anya looked straight at Isla now, her chin lifted slightly. "And you were mean. You didn't say it nicely. You didn't even look sorry." Illa's expression cracked, eyebrows raised, mouth stiff with disbelief. I glanced at Kian. He wasn't blinking, just watching Anya as if seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time. And you also said something else, Anya added, her voice dipping lower, almost conspiratorial. You said you didn't even like my Uncle Kian, that he was just a good match. A sharp inhale cut through the crowd like a knife. I saw someone lower their phone, eyes wide in shock. Isla's cheeks flushed crimson. She stepped forward quickly. That's enough, she hissed. She's just a child, she doesn't know. But no one moved. Not even the NC. And suddenly, all that noise I used to fear, the whispers, the judgment, the pity, vanished. The silence felt different now, charged, electric. Because Anya hadn't just offended me, she challenged them. This little girl with her ribboned braids and tiny voice had pulled the thread holding their perfect image together, and the fabric was starting to unravel. I still couldn't believe it. My heart pounded against my ribs, my hands trembling, but not from fear this time, from something else. Pride, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for existing. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing for certain. The silence was about to shatter. It felt like the world had stopped spinning. Anya stepped away from the microphone and stood in the center of that glittering stage, this tiny defiant figure in a sea of stunned adults. Some sat frozen in their chairs, others shifted uncomfortably, averting their eyes as if witnessing something too intimate, too honest. No one spoke. The MC had lowered his microphone. The photographer, bless him, had stopped clicking. Even the chandelier light seemed dimmer, as if holding their breath along with everyone else. I remained rooted to the spot, my breath held tight in my chest. All I could do was watch the scene unfold like a dream or a nightmare I couldn't quite wake from. Ayla looked as if someone had slapped her, her painted lips parted in shock, eyes wide, face draining of color. She glanced at Kian, clearly expecting him to laugh it off, to take control of the situation, to dismiss Anya's words as childish imagination. But he didn't. He just stood there, shoulders rigid, mouth closed, a muscle working in his jaw. His gaze flicked from Anya to Ayla, and then slowly, deliberately to me. And in that moment, something passed between us. Recognition, perhaps. He saw me, not as the burden, not as the shadow lurking in family photos, but as his sister, as Anya's mother, as someone who had been hurting silently for years. And maybe, just maybe, he realized how much it had cost me not to crumble every time they blamed me for things I never caused. My mother stood a few feet away, arms crossed tightly over her silk blouse, face carefully blank. But her eyes betrayed her. That tightness around the edges, that telltale twitch in her brow. She wasn't in control anymore. The narrative she'd so carefully constructed over 2 decades was crumbling under the weight of a child's honesty. Uncle Rehan had been watching from the front row. He did something then that I didn't expect. He clapped. Just once, but it echoed in the hushed room like a thunderclap. Then he stepped forward, walked toward the stage, and put his hand gently on Anya's shoulder. He bent down and whispered something I couldn't hear. Anya nodded and smiled faintly, her tiny hand slipping into his large one. Then he turned to face Ayla. I think the girl said what many of us were too polite to. He said quietly but clearly, his voice carrying across the silent room. Maybe it's time we stopped pretending kindness is optional. His words landed like stones in water, ripples spreading outward. Ayla looked mortified, her jaw clenched tight. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She's a child. Children exaggerate. But Uncle Rehan didn't back down. Children speak truths adults are too afraid to face. Kian exhaled, long, slow, like he'd been holding his breath for years. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, barely audible. Did you really say that? About Zoya? Ayla stiffened. It was a private conversation. You said it. His voice cracked, just barely. She didn't answer. He shook his head slowly, realization dawning on his face. I can't, he said, more to himself than anyone else. I can't do this, Ayla, not like this. My mother gasped, stepping forward. Kian, don't be impulsive. He looked at her, and his expression, God, I'll never forget it. Years of compliance and quiet agreement melted away, replaced by something harder, clearer. I've been impulsive my whole life, he said, by staying quiet when I should have defended her. My knees gave slightly. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. He turned to me then, eyes finding mine across the room. Zoya, I'm sorry. Just 2 words. Simple. Inadequate. But after a lifetime of silence, they thundered in my chest like a storm breaking. Ella stepped back, her face hardening into something cold and brittle. You're making a mistake. Kian shook his head. No, I think I've been making them for years. He took off the engagement ring from his own finger, the one he was supposed to present to her in the ceremony, and gently set it on the stage beside Isla. The small click as it touched the polished wood seemed to echo in the stunned silence. Then he walked over to me. He didn't say anything else, just pulled me into a hug so tight it felt like he was trying to compress all our lost years into one embrace. When he let go, he crouched down and pulled Anya into his arms too. I'm proud of you, he whispered to her. She grinned that gap-toothed smile, lighting up the room like sunrise after the longest night. And just like that, the silence shattered. But this time, it wasn't cruel. It was freeing. The next morning, I woke to a text from Kian. I hope you know how proud I am of you. Of Anya. I'm sorry it took me this long. I read it twice, then once more for good measure. My chest felt tight, but not in the painful way I was accustomed to. This was different. That strange, quiet way healing begins, like a wound realizing it's finally safe enough to start closing. It wasn't just about the apology. It was about being seen. Really seen, for the first time in years. I wasn't invisible to my own family anymore. I wasn't just the backdrop to someone else's celebration. Later that week, Kian came to visit. Just him, no Isla, no entourage. He brought pastries from my favorite bakery, a small gesture that spoke volumes. We sat in the living room, Anya playing with her dolls on the carpet while we talked about everything and nothing. I should have stood up for you a long time ago, he said, staring into his coffee cup. I didn't realize how deep it went until Anya said it out loud. How much we were all hurting you. I gave him a sad smile. She has more courage at 7 than I had at 27. He shook his head. She has your courage. She just didn't learn how to hide it yet. That hit something deep inside me, some buried truth I hadn't been ready to face. I didn't cry, though I came close. Instead, I watched my daughter, so bright, so fearless, so full of light, and realized something I hadn't dared to believe before. Maybe I wasn't cursed. Maybe I was just different, and different scared people. A few days later, Uncle Rehan stopped by. He brought a potted jasmine plant, white blooms just beginning to open. Something that grows quiet but strong, he said, placing it in my hands. Just like you. Even my mother. Well, she hasn't said much, but she called. That alone was miraculous. She didn't apologize, not directly, but she asked if I was doing okay, if Anya needed anything. It wasn't much, but it was something. And in our family, something was progress. Anya, of course, doesn't fully grasp what she did. She just wanted to tell the truth, to stand up for her mother, to right something she instinctively knew was wrong. Mama, she asked one night while brushing her teeth, foam circling her mouth like a tiny Santa beard, are you proud of me? I knelt beside her, looked into those wide brown eyes that saw the world so clearly, and whispered more than you'll ever know. She grinned, then added with perfect 7-year-old logic, so I'm good luck. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks, maybe months. The kind that bubbles up from your chest and makes your eyes crinkle at the corners. You, I said, pulling her into a hug, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and toothpaste, are the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me. And it's true, because here's what I've learned. Sometimes the people who carry the most pain also carry the deepest love. We move through life quietly, afraid to take up space, to disrupt, to be too much. But we are not too much. We are exactly enough for the people willing to see us fully. Anya taught me that it's okay to speak up, that defending yourself isn't disrespectful, that love, real love, shows up, even if it takes a little longer than you hoped. So no, I'm not unlucky. I am unbreakable. And if being unbreakable makes people uncomfortable, if it makes them whisper or stare or look the other way, then let them. Because from now on, I will not shrink myself to fit into someone else's idea of acceptable. And thanks to one brave little girl, I will never again believe that love has to come with silence. It turns out I was never the one bringing bad luck. I was the one breaking the cycle. And that's the luckiest thing of all.